We're thrilled to have so many guests here tonight for this really important talk. So I'm very pleased to welcome Janine, conservationist, koala field researcher, inspirational speaker and passionate advocate for koalas, all having started in 1998 with while giving a wildlife tour, and Janine discovered a method of identifying individual koalas by their noses. That led on to more projects, more studies, lots more work, and I'm sure Janine will talk about that. But she started the not-for-profit charity Koala Clancy Foundation in 2015 with a mission to inspire travellers and local communities to help ensure a future for wild koalas. And the foundation removes weeds, plants trees, advocates and educates locals about wild koalas. And to date they've planted over 129,000 koala trees and removed over 4.1 million invasive weeds. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
I'm the president of the Koala Clancy Foundation, and this is my dream job, what I do. My whole life is dedicated to koalas now, and that's what I've always wanted. I used to be a tour guide. We ran wildlife tours in the Brisbane Ranges firstly, taking international tourists up there, and to Serendip and the You Yangs in the northern sort of area of Geelong, which many of you would know. And over the years we took many thousands of international tourists there, and it blew them away, the amount of wildlife we have in this area. And I was always talking about this region in terms of its importance for wildlife. So I'm going to tell you a few things in this presentation that'll, I think, further increase your pride in this area, which I'm sure you already have, because it's really fabulous. So this is my little foundation, Koala Clancy Foundation. You can see most of my team in that photograph. We plant trees for koalas. That keeps us going for 3 months of the year and a couple of months either side planting, all on private land. Now you might ask why private land? It's where the most potential for koalas exists. So yes, there are some good spots on public land, but they're already sort of well and truly covered, and many of them already have trees on them, and it's not enough. So much of our landscape is private farmland, and it's fertile, which is what koalas need the most. They need fertile land near rivers, and that is mostly out in the farming areas. So that's where we plant. We remove weeds and we advocate for koalas at times. I'm on the National Koala Advisory team, which is a federal body, and we're engaged in some research to do with koalas. I'm going to tell you a bit about that because there's some very new stuff coming up, which I think will turn into some scientific papers that you'll be interested to hear about at this early stage. We're an independent charity, so run as a not-for-profit, but a member of Landcare. So we're kind of like a special interest land care group, if you like, a koala interested land care group. Now I put up this photo. Can you see something wrong with this photo? Can you see 2 or 3 things wrong with this photo? What do you think? Yell out. The koalas are on the ground, number 1. There's 2 close together, yes, you are winning so far. There's something else in the photo that's particularly noticeable. Yeah.
Maybe it's the wrong sort of gum tree.
No, it's not the wrong sort of gum tree, but the bugseed weed sitting there beside them. And I just thought, what a classic photo. It shows so much. So this guy here, he was an old male who at that stage was probably 16 years old. His name's Winberry. And the little one here was a 1-year-old female. She might have actually been his daughter, but it's hard for us to tell. Her name's Yera. They were sitting there together because it was one of those extreme heatwave days, which just does them in. They should not have been that close to each other, but I suspect they were both frightened, and they were just at their wits' end. It was so, so hot. So they come down to the ground when it is too hot. Of course, they'd rather be in a tree. They'd rather be up high in a tree, but that's the only place that's cool enough for them to get through the day. The things that are causing them the most trouble in this area are climate change. So it's just getting too hot, it's getting too dry, and there's going to be too many fires. So we've seen it in other parts of Victoria where the fires just do devastating damage. We've seen it here too. Those who've lived through the 1985 fire in the You Yangs would remember, and the 2006 in the Brisbane Ranges. Fires kill between 70% and 100% of the koalas in the area when they're high severity. So it's a really big problem for koalas. Droughts are a surprising slow death for koalas as well, and when you get a long drought, you know you're going to lose some. So we lost 30% of our koala population in the You Yangs in the summer of 2009-2010, and you might remember that drought broke in 2010-2011 with some big rains, thank goodness, or it would have kept going down. Habitat destruction, we were just talking about a development that you managed to stop, good job. There is still a bit of habitat destruction around here, mostly for developments and mining, that kind of thing. Roads, of course, are always a problem, and the weeds, the bone seed weeds, are damaging their habitat. We've found that koalas don't use the trees that are completely surrounded by bone seed. And that's what started our foundation. That's why we started pulling out the bone seed weeds. And we saw it just the other day again. Within a week, a koala was in the tree that he'd never used before that, because we'd removed all the weeds from around the outside. You might think, why? Yeah. I don't know. And it hasn't been studied. I think it's a physical barrier. When you're only a bit short and you're walking through on the ground, which they have to do every day, there could be a dog in there could be any number of things lying in wait for you in that thicket, and they just don't like it. It probably is affecting the nutrition level, the water level, but it wouldn't change in a week, would it? And yet they're using the trees a week after. So this is a pretty shocking graph of our koala observations in one area of the You Yangs. It's not for the whole of the You Yangs, it's just in one of the areas that we research. And you can see the pretty shocking decline here with the end of the millennium drought. That's when we lost 30% in one summer. And then we got a little bit of a bounce back as the rains got better, but it never quite went back up. And then it started to drop again. We had a bit of a drought over 2018, 2019. It started to drop again. Yeah.
Koalas get most of their drinking from the leaves.
I'm so glad you asked this question.
So why did the drought hurt?
I've got some more to tell you. Yes. Why exactly? They should be fine, shouldn't they? Getting it all from the trees. There's more. There's more. This little girl here, Misty, she was only 3 years old, but it really tuckered her out. We got 3 days over 40, and they hate that. So koalas mostly get their water from the leaves when they're eating. But if the trees are so toxic because of the heat, they can't eat and they can't drink either. So after 3 days of 40 degrees, she had no energy at all. She was just sitting in the dam waiting to die. So we brought her in, and she's fine now, and she's had several joeys, so that did work. Now, we were talking about this I was talking about it to Rod as well on the phone the other day. This is your area here. Can you see it? The Bellarine and Geelong. These are recent koala sightings in this area. Is that a bit of a shock that there's that many? I mean, these are not going back any further than 2014, so most of them are more recent. Now, the Bellarine ones, yeah, the Bellarine's definitely got a lack of koalas. It hasn't got much vegetation down the Bellarine, and that's why. But these ones up here, along the lower edge of the Barwon and the Moorabool, we were just talking about it, weren't we? These are recent, 2019, 2020, 2023, around Batesford and places like that. Now, there's not a lot of vegetation there. One tree wide along a river is not a koala habitat. They can't live in that. They can move through it, but it's just too little. Multi-choice. I'm throwing this in, all right? Multi-choice question. How many hectares would an average koala home range in this area be? Would it be A, maybe 1, B, 10, or C, 100? Who goes for A? Oh, you're very wise. Who goes for B? Maybe 10 hectares. And who would go for 100? Oh, good job, you guys. It's actually B in this area. But I do know places further out to the west where it is closer to 100 hectares per koala, which is unbelievable, isn't it? We were just looking at the area around, what was it? Queen's Park. And what would that be? Maybe 10 hectares or so? Possibly one koala could live in that whole area. And of course she can't on her own, you know, no point, is there? You've got to have others around. But I think these sightings are actually going to increase. Not because this is perfect for koalas, but because climate's pushing them south. So if we were to make Geelong a bit more perfect for them, with a bit more tree planting, could actually be really good for koalas in this area. So this is what my foundation is all about. We only plant trees in the rivers because it's been shown by science that that's where koalas go when they get hot. And those are the only areas they'll survive in heat waves in some of the western parts of New South Wales, is along the rivers. So they get the cool air coming off the river on a hot day. Also, the trees along the river are more moist and easier to eat, sweeter, and they've got lots of water in them. So just this little organisation, we've planted 41,000 on the Little River, which is where we started working with the farmers up there. Already now over 30,000 on the Moorabool, and over 30,000 along the Barwon as well, which just shows that you set yourself a target and you go for it, and amazing things can happen in a really short time, and so many people then support. It just is wonderful. But now I'm going to move on to some of the kind of exciting research stuff, because I thought you guys might be interested in some of this. Did any of you go out to the You Yangs when there were black plastic rubbish bins at the bases of trees? No? Quite a lot of people around North Geelong contacted us about it when it was happening, because they couldn't understand what it was. And this goes back to your question earlier, is it, Brenton? Yeah. So koalas do drink much more than everyone ever thought. Let me show you. They drink the rain as it runs down the tree. Has anyone ever seen it? No? I mean, most of us don't go out when it's raining, do we? But a tour operator has to. They don't have a choice, because the American couple who've been waiting for this for 6 months can't afford to change their dates, can they? So we go out in the rain. And I saw it in 2007 in the Yuyangs. I saw a koala up a tree, it started to rain, and she started furiously lapping the rain off the trunk of the tree. And I thought, well, it makes sense, you know, they're thirsty. But what I found is that science had never recorded this, ever. So a scientist called Valentina Meller at University of Sydney, she called me. I wrote a blog about it and everything many years later. She called me and she said, have you seen this happening? And I'm like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. I can give you hundreds of records of this. She's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So this rain falling down the trunk of the tree, I'll put this down, is called stem flow. And it's so exciting. We learnt all about it, me and Valentina, from a university professor in the United States who's an expert hydrologist on trees. And he said that trees kind of act like a massive net or a massive funnel. So as the rain comes down, they don't just take the rain that happens to fall on them, they kind of funnel it, you know, they kind of bring it all down to their trunk and down to their roots, so that most of the rain, a huge proportion of it, is falling around their roots where they want it. They also channel it down certain pathways, so it's not just randomly falling down a tree, it's coming down sort of the angles and the sort of muscular structure of the tree. And as koalas are drinking it, they're not just getting water, they're getting all of these enriched nutrients, minerals. It's like koala barocca, this stuff. It had never been tested in Australia to do with our eucalypts, and it had never been linked to an animal before. So the US scientist was so excited because koalas are a bit sexy, you know, and he's dealing in a boring field where no one's really very interested in stem flow, and suddenly we give him the poster child, you know, of Australia, the koala. He was out of his mind with excitement. So we had to collect the stem flow as it ran down the tree. We had to wait and wait until it rained, and then we got these samples. Here, can you see there's different colours there? So there's two species of tree, a yellow gum and a red gum. Now it turns out that they're the wrong way round. This is the yellow gum and this is the red gum. Red gums are fantastic stem flow generators. They produce huge quantities of stem flow on their trunk, but it's not as rich. The yellow gum produces less, and actually we couldn't even fill the bottle there, but it's more enriched with nutrients, so potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen. So this study will be coming out very soon. It's fascinating, and it makes us wonder, what do koalas do if it rains less? Is this something that's critical for them, you know? Is it supplementing the water they get from the leaves? Is it something that they need to survive? We don't know, but we will see more. And you might see those bins in the Yuyangs again, you never know. Oh, and now here's the next thing. I discovered in 1998 that you can tell koalas apart by their noses. I assumed someone else had noticed, but no one had. And once again, it hadn't been written up in science at all. So all this time, when scientists do research projects, the only way they can tell the koalas apart is by microchipping them or putting a collar on them. Working with Val, the scientist at University of Sydney, when I told her about the noses, she's like, really? You can tell them apart? And it's free? Yep, it's free. Discovered this in the Brisbane Ranges, actually. So this is a koala's beautiful black, very distinctive nose. You've all seen them, haven't you? Have you looked into the nostrils ever of a koala? How often do you look up someone's nose? Okay? That's the koala nose pattern. Now I'm going to hand out, oh, I left it over here. But we're going to have some audience participation here. And this is the area we're looking at here. So it's actually in the nostrils of the koala, not so much up here on the planum at the front of the nose, because that's the area that if they get hit by something or if they have a fight, they will get markings on the top of the nose. But the area inside the nostrils is pretty much formed as soon as they emerge from the pouch as their nose pattern. I know koalas who I've known their whole lives from when they were little joeys that have just emerged out of their mother's pouch, and it's because I know the nose pattern. You can see this through binoculars or with a decent DSLR camera. So this is the same koala over 2 years. His name's Mabo. Can you see that it's exactly the same? There has been essentially no change in his nose at all in 2 years. And if I had better photographs, I could show you the same thing for 15 years with some koalas. No change. It's extraordinary. Now I've used him because he's so distinctive, isn't he? I mean, you can see this big old chunk here. You can see this lovely little pattern here just on the tip of his nose. He's a beautiful, beautiful fellow. So now here's the test. Is this the same koala? No. That was easy, wasn't it? So this should be number 3. Yeah. 3A and 3B. Right. You can tell straight away that that's not the same koala, can't you? Yeah. It's so obvious now, isn't it? And these are the points that I'm looking at that basically prove that it's not the same koala. And it's not. The one on the left is Pat, she's a girl, and the one on the right is Mabo, he's a boy. Is this the same koala? So, different angle. This will be number 4A and 4B. It's hard when they get in those angles, but koalas, they're pesky. You know, they won't sort of face you the right way. They'll be up in the top of the tree, you know, moving around. So, who says yes, this is the same koala? And who says no? You're the only one brave enough to say no, aren't you? But it is the same koala, so I'm sorry. Bravery doesn't always work, does it? It is the same koala. This is Kiki, and you can see just here on the tip of the nose, she's got that kind of white blaze there. It's not a result of her being hit or damaged, I don't think. She's had it ever since she was a tiny baby. But also this area here going down to the lip on her right side is quite distinctive. It's harder to see here, but it's definitely still there. Is this the same koala?
Yes, it is.
I can see I've got some recruits here. Good koala nose ideas. It's fantastic. It is actually quite a different scenario, isn't it? Because this one she's in full light, and actually she's aged a bit. So the planum, the front of the nose, has faded. They're a bit like us, they kind of fade a bit as they get older. But yeah, it's quite distinctive, isn't it? This long area doesn't appear to be symmetrical at all, the koala nose patterns, and it doesn't appear to be passed on from mum to Joey, so they don't have similarities. I've looked up koala noses since 1998. And I've never seen two the same. 161 koalas I've got documented nose patterns of, and never seen two the same. Isn't it amazing? It's so special, and it's a Geelong thing. This happened here. Is this the same koala? And what do you think? I mean, why do you say no? I mean, it's pretty similar. Frills is a really good description. I like that. Scallops, frills, there's no frills. He's a no frill koala. You're right, it's not the same koala. Well done. So this fella on the right, he's Yanabil, big, healthy, beautiful male. And this fella over here on the left, he's our dominant male, Gulkurguli, which means boy in Wathaurong. We call him Gully for short. He's probably the father of all the joeys in the area. He's a stud. Yes.
Very happy man.
He's a very happy boy. So the benefits of this is that it's not invasive at all. You don't need to catch a koala to do this. And when scientists catch koalas, quite often they'd like to know who they are before they have to catch them. This will help them in doing that. You think kind of that they've got it all sorted out. They've got a microchip and they've got a reader here. They can tell who they're looking at, but they can't always. And so sometimes they catch koalas they don't need to catch, which means they end up with scratches they don't need to have. And the koala's upset. It is reliable. That's all. Questions?
No, Janine, one of the things that we've done, Katerina and I have done lately to impress the living daylights out of our overseas visitors, particularly our Russians, is take them to Raymond Island.
Oh, yes.
I was born and bred in Bairnsdale, so
yes.
it's kind of in my home backyard.
Oh, yes.
But that little walkway between where the punt drops you, and you just basically go through some houses and whatever, and there's a massive population there.
I know.
It's wonderful, and they look healthy and well looked after. Do you know if somebody's looking after them? Because it's a documented tourist walkway.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that someone as passionate as yourself is out there looking after the trees that are planted and everything else, because it's a real asset to the whole of the country, really.
Yeah, Raymond Island is amazing to see. It just gives you an idea of what sort of wildlife we would have had once everywhere,
Sure.
Doesn't it? Because it's not just koalas, it's echidnas and it's wallabies and it's all sorts of things. Raymond Island's over in eastern Victoria near Bairnsdale, and the population of koalas there is unusually high, and this is something that comes up quite often because Cape Otway also has an unusually high koala population, and the Green Triangle down near Portland has unusually high. So if they get too high, the numbers, they start to kill the trees. And no one's even really sure why it happens, but it particularly happens in areas where there's coastal manna gum, which is like lollies to koalas, so I understand, and they just can't eat anything else because it's so delicious, it's so fantastic. One thing I didn't talk about so much in that is that I mentioned it briefly when we were talking about the water. Climate change is one of the major killers, not just because of the heat, the drought and the fires, but also, and this is shocking, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are reducing the nutritional value of the leaves, which means that koalas are under so much threat that the UN put them on a special list of the 10 species worldwide most at risk. This should be huge news in Australia. We have almost no chance of saving koalas because of this carbon dioxide problem. And because trees, you all know the Brisbane Ranges used to be full of koalas, yeah? The trees are now toxic to them. They can't eat them. They look at them and just can't eat them. and we can't at the moment do anything to fix it. But there is a study being done in New South Wales where they're trying to find out how they might find a solution for this. But I mean, it should be the biggest news. I'm desperately, desperately frightened for them.
How long does it take for a tree to grow to be a good dinner?
Oh, such a good question. They will start eating it within 2 years. In 4 years, it will support them, but only for a short time. And then by the time it's 7 or 10 years old, it's a koala tree, for sure. So this is not a, should have done it 10 years ago kind of a situation. It's a, let's do it now. We've got maybe a decade. We can get a lot of trees in that time. Yeah.
If you say the trees in the Brisbane Ranges are toxic, what's the difference between the trees there and the trees that you're planting?
Yeah, very good question. So the trees we are planting are the #1 best, highest nutrition tree for the Western Plains, which is the river red gum. But we do plant other species, of course, and it's very, very palatable to koalas. So it's probably going to be a couple of percentage points better to start with. So as the others decline, the Brisbane Ranges trees are declining, the river red gum will still retain its palatability through that. Turns out that koalas and there's been some new research done at the Australian National University on what makes a tree palatable to a koala. It turns out they can only process certain of the plant secondary metabolites and not others. And so messmates, stringy barks, not good for koalas. All the stringy bark group, very poor for koalas. All the gum group, much better for koalas. So now that we know this, we can start to work towards planting really palatable forests. But the other thing the research has found is that it's not just the species, it's the individual tree. So mama tree over here, that constantly looks awful, like she's got no leaves and there's big chunks out of her leaves. It's because everything loves her, she's delicious. We should be planting the ugliest trees we can find, not the pretty ones, because the pretty ones are not getting eaten because they're not delicious, they're so toxic to everything. It's really, it's changed everything about the way we see planting now. So I plant as many different local provenances as I can and try and mix up the parent stock as much as I can to try and overcome that.
Fantastic. Barry's got a question over here.
Of those trees that are planted, what loss do you have?
Oh, survival rate.
Yes.
Our survival rate's very, very high. 86%, 93%. In some of the tough little river sites, we're getting really high survival. The trick, I think, is that we plant a lot of companion plants. So we'll do a red gum here and 3 salt bushes around here. Or 3 podolepis or everlasting daisy of some sort. And I was doing that because that's what nature does, it's normal. And then I spoke to a nurseryman and he said, oh yeah, he said that could be the difference between your survival and others not. He said beneficial insects, if you're bringing them in, it's helping the tree. But also things like wattles, plant wattles. They fix nitrogen in the soil. They make it available for the eucalypt. So I don't just plant eucalypts by any means. We don't plant sort of long lines of really close together eucalypts. Eucalypts are almost the exception to what we plant. There'll be one there and there won't be another one until way over there. And it really works. We've had good years though. Might be a bit different this year.
And the gentleman here, I think he had a question.
Yeah, something a little bit lighter. I camped at Murray River and had done for 40 years, and between Wye and Apollo Bay there's a lot of koalas, and
But one day, sitting out in front of my caravan and looking at the river, and all of a sudden this koala comes across the river. I never knew koalas could swim.
It swam.
But he walked right up to the middle of the camp, and we had people all the way up looking, and he wasn't, well, he or she, we don't know which, but was not a bit frightened. And got to the far end and climbed up a tree, and I'm quite happy.
It's such amazing.
I didn't know a koala could swim.
They can. They run out of energy a bit if it's a long distance, but they're such charming animals, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, what other wild animal will even live with us in the way a koala does? You know, it will walk through people's shops and buildings. And I know it's awful, it means they haven't got enough habitat, but they are a bit quirky like that. They're a bit different.
But down the Otways there is plenty of habitat.
Oh, no, there's not.
A lot of koalas.
There's a lot of koalas. That's not a good thing. They're a very brittle population. It's happened a couple of times in populations like that where they've been overabundant and then they've been gone, just like that.
Because they take about 7 or 10 years and then they are koala trees. But do you have to manage, almost protect the little trees while they grow to stop the koalas from eating too soon? Or is that
Just
not-
plant more trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant news.
We are really lucky that we're quite ambitious. So when we say to a landowner, we want beside your river, we don't want 10 metres beside your river, we want 50. Sometimes they go, yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes we say, how about 100? And they go, yeah, it's okay. And so we plant so much that we overwhelm the wildlife. And we don't get nearly the amount of browsing damage on ours. I think a lot of plantings where they're too narrow, it's almost like a supermarket shelf that says, come and get me. And the wallabies just love it and they eat everything. So I say just plant more, and it's amazing how many will survive. We still will lose a few for sure, but we don't go to great lengths to stop the browsing animals or the koalas. You've got to be a bit fatalistic. Just keep doing it, and it will work.
I'm trying to place out of Mansfield, and not koalas, but kangaroos, deer, cheetahs, wombats. He's 930 metres up. Is there a limit on height?
That limit is changing. So climate change is forcing them towards the coast, but it's also forcing them up the hills. And areas where koalas didn't used to live, they are starting to be seen higher and higher up the mountains. So maybe one day.
Because they do get snow, 6 times a year or so.
I don't think cold bothers koalas. No, I've seen them do the exact same thing in cold weather as they do in temperate, normal weather. Haven't seen any change in behaviour to do with cold, because their fur is one of the most insulating furs on the planet. It's up there with polar bears in terms of its insulating qualities. But heat, they hate. Oh, the heat. Yeah, oh, they're made to go to 37 degrees, and after that, they die.
I thought this is a predator for them.
No, I don't think so. No, thank goodness. Some good news.
I'll take the microphone. Thank you very much, Janine. I'm sure we can all thank Janine in the usual manner.